Transition and sound is on and we are live. Yay! We're
Yay!
live. Welcome to PokéStew with Mike and Jen, episode number 14. 14, where we are talking about VGC18 with our lovely guests. As you can see below me, the lovely Gabby Snyder. Next to me and on the top there is Zach Carlson. In the middle there and to my right, left, I can't even tell anymore, is my man Mike. And then down at the bottom over there is our main man, T-Man. Mike's going to start it off with our usual disclaimer, and then we'll get going with our chat. So,
yeah,
Mike, take it away.
Before the usual disclaimer, I'll just point out for the people that are actually watching maybe on my channel that the orientation of the people is different. So when Jen was pointing in random directions at people's, it may not match on my display, but that's okay. And if it looks a little bit weird because I'm sitting to the side because Jen don't know how to crop.
Shut up! We have five videos right now. We just lost Zach again. But
4.
We had 5 videos. Zach is coming to us live from Florida in a hotel room where his Wi-Fi is not so great. So that's why
I've been there, done that.
His is going in and out.
No.
Gabby, you're up in Boston, right?
Western Mass. I took over my mom's office, actually.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you. All right,
Hey.
Mike.
Don't thank me.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom.
All right, go ahead, Mike. Sorry about that. And we got
No,
Zach.
no
There he is.
Hey, Zach's back. Yay.
Hi.
All right. So our typical disclaimer for episode 14th of the PokéStew. Seems like every episode we get more and more people. So none of the people
We're just
going
to have a whole big thing the next time of just icons, like the Brady Bunch.
Oh, my God.
Let's do it.
So anyways, none of the people that you see on this Twitch stream tonight are employees of the Pokemon Company, the Pokemon Company International, Nintendo, Game Freak, or any of the affiliated things. Chinese people making products for plushies, doesn't matter. We're none of those people. Everything you hear tonight is solely the opinions of the 5 of us that are going to be rambling on about statistics and Pokemons and things of that nature, as well as the upcoming events or past current events that have piqued our interest, or any other side excursions we might be on. So again, solely the opinions of us 5.
That's right. We're
All
very opinionated. Particularly me.
Some more than others.
So we have a gamut of panelists, as everybody in my chat is saying, and I wanted to say thank you to Gio because he just rated us with 78 viewers. So thank you and welcome to all 78 of Gio's viewers. That's fantastic. So our panelists of judges, or our panelist of panels, or whatever, don't mind me. We brought you a little bit of everything. So it's Mike and I on the judging TO side. Zach is our main man on the usage stats, and anybody that follows Zach, I think Zach, you got like 5,000 followers now or something crazy like that.
2.
2? Well,
2.
you should have 5, but you have a lot of people.
He's trying to catch up.
He's got a lot of people following him. Zach gives us all of those fancy usage stats that he makes those really awesome graphics on. Then we got our main man, Tommy, the creator of the Double Duck team from last year. So he's going to be your expert on team building. And then we got our Gabby Snyder over here, who's our official commentator and all-around great gal. So that's why we have our little gamut of experts here. So welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for being on.
I'm just going to say, you guys count all your subscribers and followers in terms of thousands, like 2,000, 5,000. So when you say 5 or 2, I count them in 1s and 2s. So when I say 3, I mean 3. It's awesome.
All right. The new goal for tonight. We need to have Mike up to. What are you at, Mike? What are you at right now on Twitter? What's the message of it?
5? I don't know.
All right, let's get to 1K by the end of the night. Let's do this, guys!
Oh, baloney. There's no way I'm hitting 1,000 at the end of the night.
Well, we're just gonna
Never
promote
say
you
never.
on our channel here.
Yeah.
Everybody go and follow Summit City Gym on Twitter. That's Mike's channel there. You know what ours is, Liberty Garden VG. So anyway, as you can see on the screen, we're looking at some teams and some information on some VGC18. I tried to get some feedback from Stunfisk today, but I guess I waited too long to put up a feedback thread, and I didn't actually get any feedback. So if you're here from Stunfisk, first of all, welcome. And then second, maybe we should get some messages eventually from you guys. I don't know. Hopefully. But anyway, so I'm gonna kick it to you guys. Where do you want to start? Like VGC18 is a mishmash of a bunch of different things, and I'm completely lost. So I'm just gonna take a back seat on this one today.
I can take it from here. There's one big problem right now with the VGC18 format. And you might think that I'd be happy about this, but I'm really not happy about this. Rain is absolutely busted.
Rain is busted? Uh-oh.
It's a problem. Like, the problem is that right now, with the specific Swift Swimmers that we have in the format, largely they're too powerful, and the checks to Rain don't really check Rain anymore, because with Ludicolo being the most prominent Swift Swimmer of the group, the common checks like Feeny and most of the other water types that could usually switch in on it can't switch in on it anymore because they're taking over half from the Energy Ball, which still the same thing in 15. It's the same thing, but the problem is now we have Z moves, so that now Ludi can actually have KO pressure on turn 1, whereas in the past I couldn't actually KO things like Kangaskhan on turn 1, which is a huge it's a completely different way to play Rain now, and it's really, really oppressive. And the other problem is that we have Pelipper. The other thing that you can switch in on with Rain stuff is you switch in your grass types, and like stuff like Tapu Bulu would be perfect for that. Tapu Bulu, Amoonguss, perfect, fine. But all those things kind of just drop to Hurricane. And it's not like Amoonguss can even redirect a lot of the water moves from stuff like Ludi or Kingdra, because Rage Powder is ignored by grass types. So Ludi kind of just ignores that, and largely overall, Rain is just very, very oppressive, to the point where we're seeing people even run that 5-mon Rain team. On the screen you see the team with like either Pelipper or Politoed with like one of the 3 Swift Swimmers, but there are teams out there doing super well that are running all 5 of those mons. Ugh. And it's honestly disgusting, just because it's just very, very oppressive.
Tommy, let me backtrack you. So Swift Swim has always been around, right? Yeah. This is a thing. But and we may have a bunch of new players in the channel. So explain to people why Swift Swim is so busted this time around. And it's kind of something that is antithetical to the way that Pokemon works, but I'll let you explain it.
Right, like Swift Swim always was like on the fringe of being like extremely like broken, but it wasn't like too bad because of the fact that Swift Swim boosts your speed. It doubles your speed when you're in the rain. The problem with Swift Swim compared to something like Chlorophyll or Sand Rush is that Rain boosts the power of water moves, whereas Sand and Hail don't boost the respective types of the things that they're powerful against. And the Chlorophyll users are grass types, so it's not like they're really benefiting from the fire moves because there's no like main fire type attacks on these grass mons. So Rain was always like very, very close to being very busted because of how well the Rain works for both speed and offensive capabilities. The fact that it has Z moves now really just takes the offense that it can put out into an entire another tier, to the point where there's not a lot of things that can actually take the hits. Like a lot of the games come down to like these standard teams. If you call the Tapu Fini, or if you call the Hydro Vortex correctly and can switch in your Tapu Fini or whatever your water type is on the Hydro Vortex, that's generally how you get most of your momentum back against Rain. But if you ever get this wrong, you're playing on the back foot for like pretty much the entirety of the game.
Am I also right in thinking that Swift Swim is now activating the minute that it turns that it gets on the field, instead of not being active until the next turn? I mean, it was always active, but the speed change is now active immediately, correct?
Sort of. It's only for Mega Swampert. So basically what happened is now when Mega Evolution happens, Mega Evolution speeds are recalculated. So if you have a Swampert on the field and it Mega Evolves as you switch in your Drizzlemon, because basically here's how it will happen. Speeds are set for the turn, then switching will happen. So when switching happens now, if you switch in your Pelipper or your Politoed, Drizzle will activate. So now the Rain's up. So now Mega Evolution happens, and when Mega Evolution happens, the speeds are recalculated specifically only for the Megamon. So if Mega Swampert evolves that turn, it will recalculate and will actually get the speed boost from Rain, which is something that it did not have in the past, and honestly completely changes its usability because it changes it from having to protect on turn 1 like all the time or risk taking massive damage, and now you can just like pull off these crazy plays where you just switch in your Pelipper, and then all of a sudden your Swampert's now speeding the Kangaskhan, you're KOing with Waterfall. So it changes a lot. It's not changing for the other Swift Swimmers, but just for that one.
Okay, so the speed recalcs only happen on the Mega Evolutions.
Right.
Right. So if I have a regular Swift Swimmer and I send in my Drizzle Pokemon, it's not like it's going to recalc the speeds for that. So that mechanic is still the same as previously.
Right. It's also right. It's also really important to note for stuff like Chlorophyll Mons with Mega Charizard. It's not like those will get the Chlorophyll boost on turn 1 as you Mega Evolve now. You have to still wait for a turn of Sun to activate because the speed only recalculates on the Mega Pokemon. So if Charizard got a speed buff, which it doesn't, then it would get the added speed, but it doesn't. It just stays the same, and it does not affect the Chlorophyll Mon whatsoever.
Okay.
I had to figure that out the hard way. I tried using Charwai Venusaur to save my Como. It didn't work.
Yeah, that happened to me when I was looking at the speed stuff. Somebody like Mega, and all of a sudden they were faster. I'm like, but I thought that was all set, but I found out that it got recalced, and I got angry.
I think that's something that everybody has to learn the hard way. But I kind of want to backpedal things a little bit. I mean, you talked about rain counters. You mentioned grass type Pokemon, but you left out probably the single worst Pokemon that you'd see if you were a rain user in 15. Speaking from experience, Ferrothorn. It's steel, it's grass, it's slow, it's bulky. Is it still a viable counter for rain in 18?
To an extent, most of these super hard rain teams will be running something like very specific for Ferrothorn. We're seeing a lot of the 5-mon, like 5 Watermon teams are generally carrying Phytinium Z on either the Politoed or a Thundurus in that slot as well, because they'll be running Focus Blast, yeah. And I think I've seen the Swamperts on those teams also carrying Superpower over a different coverage move like Ice Punch or Rock Slide. And that's just so you need things to hit the Ferrothorn, but like they are available, and it might not be consistent for best of 3. I'm not sure yet to have that like Fight Z, and maybe those teams will need to have stronger answers to Ferrothorn. But against like some of these other rain teams, like against a more common variant would probably be along the lines of say Pelipper and then either Ludicolo or Kingdra plus Metagross and Lele. And against like a team like that. There's not a lot of answers they have right there to Ferrothorn. So Ferrothorn is a very, very strong bring right there. And they likely try to answer the Ferrothorn in the last 2 slots. But you immediately take out a lot of the options they have within those, like that core of 4 mods that they're used to bringing to a lot of their games.
I've seen a lot of Hydreigon on teams like that. Right. But then they're forced to actually bring the Hydreigon, which puts them in a kind of an awkward position if they don't have something to smack around with it.
Right.
All right, cool. So I'm going to look down to the next thing on your list here, unless you want me to go across. Do you prefer either way? Cross or down?
That's fine. Let's go cross for now.
All right, so
while we're still on rain, talk about Gothma.
All right, yeah, Gothma is an archetype that we've had for a while now, right? A couple of years at least. So tell us a little bit about how that's the same and how it's different this coming season.
Yeah, it's weird. One of the things that's not listed on here that is working its way onto a lot of these Gothma teams is Persian, which is a really, really cool mod for Gothma. Because...
And is that Alolan Persian or regular Persian? Alolan Persian, okay.
Yeah, because the Alolan Persian has access to a very fast Fake Out and more importantly, Parting Shot. So with Shadow Tag, you're able to lock something in with the -1 attack and special attack, and you can switch in your Politoads, your Mawailes. Snorlax is popping its way onto here as well. Has been seeing a decent amount of use just because, Snorlax loves those Heal Pulse users, so being able to lock things in front of a Snorlax that's boosting and just have your Goth sit there and spam Heal Pulse on it has been pretty strong so far. And I definitely see like a few players like running that kind of stuff. They still have the Paris Trap endgame of old, where they would just try and take 2 knockouts as quickly as possible, and then have the Politoed come in and immediately just go for Parasong and try and just stall out the game that way. Another reason why Heal Pulse has been as good as it used to be.
That's one of my favorite modes on Gothma. Perish. But that's like one of my favorite things anyway. So.
I know, Zach, you've played a lot more Gothmog than me, so is there anything that you want to add?
Yeah, tell us your wisdom, Zach. Share your wisdom.
All right, so as one of like the only teams I used in 2015 and the only team I've actually used in 2018, I have a lot to say about this, but a lot of it's probably extremely opinionated, so I'm going to try to figure out what, more informational. Well, for one thing, Aegislash picks up Neverending Nightmare in Gen 7, which is an easy knockout on almost any key component of your team. So you're pretty much forced to use something like, as you mentioned, Persian or Aegislash, although it's still kind of an uphill battle. I think other than Aegislash picking up that like insane offensive pressure from turn 1, I think otherwise it's improved. You also have stuff like Incineroar, which again helps with Aegislash, helps break down a lot of the steals that Mawile and Gothitelle have trouble with. I've seen some Japanese players using Araquanid on this type of team, which did help with a very particular weakness to Heatran that you have if you don't use Rain. And it also helped with Neverending Nightmare with Wide Guard, but that's been patched, so we're going to have to find another answer. I've also
it's for the best.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of different combinations of Tapu Koko or Tapu Bulu or both on this team, just because trapping your opponent in with their Tapu out there and then getting your terrain by switching your Tapu in while theirs is stuck with Gothitelle's Shadow Tag is just incredibly good. Like, you have your Tapu Bulu out, you can probably set Trick Room, even if you can't, they're trapped in fighting a Tapu Bulu, they can't intimidate it, they can't take away its terrain. I like it. Just stay away from Aegislash.
Oh,
it sounds like a really versatile team.
Yeah, something that you said before that reminded me, like, one of my favorite things when testing the Gothmog stuff, so like already, has been having those switch-ins to Neverending Nightmare, because they're not very common. That's one of the things that Snorlax does do for the team, because a lot of the times if you lead your Gothitelle into an Aegislash, just what they're going for on turn 1, they'll go right for that Neverending Nightmare, and a lot of times you can switch Snorlax in on it. And I'm sure people will catch on to this like as the season goes on. Like early on, people are like not catching on, and like a lot of like Snorlax just like switch right into the Neverending Nightmare. And it's something that team like really needs. It really needs some sort of Shadow Ball or Nightmare switching, but it has it now between that and Persian. But we'll see if like it's already like 5 mons that you're like locked into using. Then if you're gonna use that, you're like like the 3 mons on screen plus Persian and Snorlax, and you only have like one move slot to really like toy or one Pokemon slot rather to toy around with. And I'm sure that 5 has some pretty bad weaknesses. I know that like those 5 already are not huge fans of Tapu Koko, which are a big problem for it, which is where like, stuff like the Tapu Bulu that you mentioned come up.
One other thing I forgot to mention with the Aegislash weakness, not only can it threaten KOs on almost anything on your team, it also isn't affected by Shadow Tag.
Right. Yeah.
So your opponent can reset their terrain, reposition their board, get their Intimidates out. So even if you think you're all set with your, I'm going to Helping Hand Sucker Punch that Aegislash so it never gets to Neverending Nightmare, they can just switch it.
Yeah, I think Shadow Tag, honestly, is probably one of the hardest teams to play in terms of board position, because you don't really have a lot of wiggle room. You have to be really confident in how you play it. And if your opponent catches you off guard, like using Neverending Nightmare to KO literally anything on your team, that can really just put you at a disadvantage from the start.
Totally.
Yeah, I played around with it a little bit. Like, again, I'm anywhere the level of any of y'all, but I played around with it because I said, well, this sounds like a fun thing to do. And usually I run across somebody that knows exactly what to do, and it's like over in a couple turns, and I'm like, oh, sad.
Yeah, I've tried to learn how to play Shadow Tag for years, and it's just one of those things where I don't think it works well with how my brain processes Pokemon, and I've accepted that. I haven't moved on yet, but I've accepted it.
I take the more infantile junior approach where I like mash buttons, do mass damage, and outlive.
Yes.
That's kind of my style.
With whatchamacallit, with Shadow Tag, I think specifically it's like really important to like realize that you limit their options severely when you limit their amount of switching options. They're if they can't switch, they only have a certain set of moves on their side of the field that they have access to. So a lot of their plays become a lot more predictable, but it's also a two-way street because that involves you also keeping either your Gothitelle or your Gengar out.
Yep.
So like you have a little bit more maneuverability than they do, but your plays are still very telegraphed, and if you give away too much of what you're doing and you give them one turn where you slip up and they take a pretty key knockout, especially on something like your Gothitelle or your Gengar, and all of a sudden they can switch again and you're not locking them anymore, like you can lose so much pressure in the span of just one turn. It's a very volatile team to play, but when it's played at like a very high level, it's like one of the hardest to stop as well.
Yeah, and I think that's why back in like 15 we saw it, in the top tiers, if you will, of so many different tournaments, because if you can get the play style to work for you and you play it well and you can do that for 9-10 rounds of Pokemon, like you're gonna go far.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so moving on, I'm gonna go across and down. Tommy, is that all right? To Komo-o. I know I pronounced that wrong, but whatever. Komo-mo-mo-mo.
How do you pronounce that? You know what? Good luck to you, Gabby, this year.
Wow.
With all of
man,
the
zero
Pokemon
confidence.
names. No,
Zero.
I'm just saying.
No. We're just wishing
luck.
you luck, man, because I can't even pronounce these things. This is awful.
I'm pretty sure it's Komo-o, but
okay.
I have not been corrected on that one yet, so your mileage may vary.
I'm just waiting for the first stream with Stakataka.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I said Stakataka at least once on stream last weekend because I was very excited about that.
Gotta fit in there.
Fantastic.
I just want to be the first one.
It's not even in format. I gotta say it.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it, especially me. Stakataka. So
Sorry.
Komo-o, Kama Chameleon, as I'm gonna call him from now on.
I call him Spoon Boy.
Like he was pretty garbage last format. I don't think anybody. I mean, maybe people looked at him, but I don't think anybody ever seriously used him. Why is he on this list? Why?
As I shared with you guys before, who knew that all you need to do to make a Mon viable was give it a 185 base power spread move that boosts all of your stats at once? Who knew that's all you had to do to make a Pokemon good?
So what is the name of this broken
fairy?
Like, the other story I told you before, I'll tell again to the lovely viewers out there. First day of the format, new me, so happy, just playing new teams. And I'm like, I'm beating all these guys. I'm like, this is great. And then I can run into this guy with a Como. I'm like, why is this guy using a stupid Como? It's like an easy Mon. This is an easy game. Get 4-0'd. And then I play like 3 or 4 other Como teams that get 4-0'd again. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's see if this is actually a bad Mon or not. And then you run Como. And like, I start winning like all my games. And I'm like, oh, it's actually that good. The game's
Dare I say Como-o? Yeah, that was my dad joke for the night. You're welcome.
Done. Short leash. All right.
So what's the deal? So it's just that move. The move.
Yes.
That's the only thing. It doesn't have like synergy with anything else. It's not like you build a team around. It's really good. It's not like it does anything. It's just that one move. And what is that move called again?
It is called Clangorous Soul Blaze.
And that is it's Z move, right?
Yes, it's Z move, which is based off of the Clanging Scales attack.
Is there any way to block it or stop it from happening other than
there's actually a few. There's quite a number of them. So obviously, the first thing that comes to people's mind is Wide Guard, which is why we had the whole Wide Guard glitch in the first place. But Wide Guard only like limits some of the damage. It still allows them to get the boosts off.
Okay.
If you want to stop the boost from happening, you need to have the Soul Blaze hit only fairy types or Mons with soundproof. So you can have 2 Tapus on the field, a Tapu and a fairy, a Tapu and another soundproof Mon on the field. Funny enough, the most common soundproof Mon in the format is Como-o. So, yeah.
You can't beat him, join him, I guess.
Right. So the whole deal with that is that you have 2 Mons that block the damage output from Soul Blaze, and if you have that, then the boost won't happen. So like there are a couple ways to stop the boost from happening. The problem is that generally the Como teams right now are built specifically to beat the rest of the Tapus for Como, and then have Como beat the rest of the field. Because without fairy types, Como can actually run through quite a number of Pokemon in the format. There's very few Pokemon that actually truly wall Como once it's set up besides the fairies for the most part. And not all the, like, it's mainly Tapu Fini is the big problem for Como, because that's the only one that it really just can't run through on its own. We're seeing people run like Flamethrower and Poison Jab as the coverage move on Como, and Poison Jab will get Bulu. The number one Como partner right now is Charizard, which with the Flamethrower boosted in the sun does KO Coco and Bulu. Does a lot of damage to Tapu Lele as well. So like with that in mind, like you can like very reasonably get through the other three Tapus. It's just Tapu Fini being the very, very hard one. So that's what most of these teams are like geared to do. They're just there to help the Como set up, and then once it's set up, or even before it sets up, just beat all the Tapus on the field and make sure Como's in a good spot to just win the game for you, because it is that strong. It can win the game for you all on its own.
Cool.
So then what defines a good spot for Como? I mean, I know you mentioned no Tapus, but like, are there any other Pokemon that it really doesn't like staring down before it tries to go for the setup?
I mean, for the most part, no. It just depends on the situations that it's in. Obviously, one of the really critical things about Como running Soundproof is probably I don't know if it's the number one usage ability right now on Battle Spot, but I think it very quickly will become.
I can check on that.
Yes,
well,
please.
I actually have it here, and I'll pull it up. Mike, we're going to the slide that's the Como one.
Yeah.
So there's the information from the Battle Spot stats there, and because I have it. Never mind. I have it just the moves, not the abilities.
I can look at the abilities. Give me.
I have it pulled up. Hold on. Soundproof is its number one ability, 77%. Bulletproof is number 2.
Wait, mine says it's 83.2%.
Mine does too. I've got 83.2.
I'm on the championship battles for.
I have like an older updated one that was also 77. So like
It's
regardless,
weird.
it is widely the most used ability, and there's a very key reason for this behind redirection. 2 of the super effective hyper voices from Gardevoir and Salamence cannot hit Como like with their spread moves when they're next to redirection. So if you have a Moongus or you have Clefairy out there, and you just go for Follow Me or Rage Powder, and then Gardevoir or Mence goes for Hyper Voice, and Como does not take any damage, so it can very safely set up in front of those with a redirection partner, which is like one of the like best reasons for running Soundproof. It also stops people from going for Perish Song against you, because Perish is a very good way to stop a lot of setup mons, because you just Perish and stall them out, and they have to switch out and lose all their boosts, but that doesn't work with Soundproof. And then also, you could switch in your own combo on other Como, so they don't get their Z boots off, which is like very important.
That's nuts.
It might have been said when I went out, but Gengar is also an incredible.
Oh no!
Not only can it, it can. No, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Stay with us.
I thought I was going out for a second.
You were a bit.
You can also not only do you like Sludge Bomb fairies and such, and maybe Ally Switch if you really want to take a Moonblast with Gengar, but you can also Perish Song next to your own Como.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
That's insane.
Oh
That
my
thing
God.
is so busted, man. It's so broken. Tommy, you
So
mentioned that Como you're going to put with Charizard. I'm assuming since you're saying Sun, you're putting it with Char-Y.
Yeah.
Okay.
Since like I said, the whole goal is to make sure you're beating opposing Tapu, specifically Fini. And surprisingly, Charizard is actually very, very good at handling opposing Fini, just because like Solar Beam does a large chunk of damage to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it also provides Tailwind, which is something that Como also likes, because if you're able to set up Tailwind before you go for the Soul Blaze, then now you're outspeeding things. So when you go for Soul Blaze, you get a +1 boost in your defenses as well, which makes it a lot easier for Como to take hits after it goes to the Soul Blaze. Whereas if you say go for a Soul Blaze with a Kangaskhan on the field that's faster than you, it can hit you for around like 70 to 80%, and then you get the Soul Blaze off, and you're not going to be able to like completely use the boost nearly as well. Whereas if you're able to Soul Blaze while you're faster than everything else on the field, you're going to get much more like value out of your boosts.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask a stupid question.
Wow.
Go right ahead.
Wow, thanks. You're not even just wow. No stupid questions. You're not even going to say that. Okay.
I'm the king of stupid questions. It's okay.
All right. Well, so with all the stat boost stuff, what about Haze? Talk to me about Haze.
Haze is something that we might see if setup becomes a big problem. A large part of why I think that Como is so good and why specifically clearing a Soul Blaze is so good is because unlike other setup moves, it does a lot of damage on the turn that it boosts, which makes it a lot harder for things to sit in front of you and just like negate your boost afterwards. The thing is that the number one Haze user is Tapu Fini, which is something that doesn't get hit by Soul Blaze. But in the same vein, if you have your Como out on the field, you're not going to be wanting to set up in front of the Fini anyways. It's something that you're already going to like in your head want to take care of before you go for the Soul Blaze with Como. And there aren't many other Haze users out there, at least not ones that are viable. Whereas like in last year's format, we saw Eevee get dumpstered by Haze because there was nothing that Eevee could really do against Tapu Fini if it did learn it. So.
Right.
This is totally anecdotal, but I've seen several Milotic running Haze recently. I have no idea what the calcs are against Como, but some people out there think that could be a viable option.
Right. And I believe Milotic takes the Soul Blaze super well. I'm not sure how well it takes close combat since we've seen like some people running mixed with close combat, some people running Focus Blast. I obviously think the close combat's a lot better just because I don't think dealing with the accuracy is something you want to do with your boosted mon, but like the thing is if you're running both close combat and climbing scales, both of those moves lower your defense, so it's a lot harder to keep like your defense boosts, and it's very unlikely that you're going to have them for the late game, but the goal is to make sure that you pick up knockouts before the defense boost getting dropped matters.
Going the other way with the defense boost, the player Snow, top 4 worlds this year, he had recently used Como in what I believe is a large Japanese grassroots tournament, and rather than close combat, he opted for Drain Punch, and he went like max attack on that. So instead of losing the defense boost, he did a lot less damage, but he kept the boost and healed at the same time. So that might be something interesting to look at. I still don't know what I like better.
It's definitely something to look into. The only problem I have with like the Komos that are built that way is because you can't really run bulk on Como because you still need to be max speed or nearly max speed to outspeed Tapu Koko, which is something like you basically have to outspeed because of Dazzling Gleam. We are seeing some Koko drop Dazzling Gleam, so maybe it's something you can possibly do in the future, but early on in the format, it's not something I'd be comfortable doing. We're seeing a lot of Koko drop Dazzling Gleam for Hidden Power Ice, which deals with Landorus a lot more consistently, as well as like still doing significant damage to Salamence.
Right.
All right. Anything else that you guys want to add on Como-O?
Oh, Zach, how meteoric was Como-O's rise?
Okay. It was okay. I have a real answer and a joke answer. I'll hit you up with the real answer first. Okay, so week 1 of Battle Spot. To be fair, week 1 was pretty weird. Como was number 38 most used, which is pretty low. Then week 2, it was 28. Then week 3, it was 24. Week 4, it was 21. And now week 5 just passed us, and it's number 15. That is like saying so much because 13 is like this impenetrable number. Number 1 through 13 aren't changing anytime soon. So 15 is like, there's not really much else Como can do from there except like overtake Kangaskhan and stuff like that. Also, a couple of weeks ago, using Como-O's meteoric rise to success, I used an exponential plot line to see where it would be, and I'm not sure if that graph is accurate, but it does say that Como will be on literally every single VGC team, 100% of them by March 7th, 2018. So watch out for that.
I'm holding and writing that down right now. March 7th, 100% Como.
Oh, I want to see that.
I'm holding you to that. I'm going to tweet you. Please tweet that exponential graph out soon. I know Aaron Trailer will appreciate it. All right, so going across, because I really don't want to talk about the thing down below yet, but going across, Hard Trick Room, which is one of my favorite modes, and my son Ian did really well with a Tommy team his first year in juniors, and then in Worlds that year with a Hard Trick Room team.
Oh, I remember that team.
That team was so much fun. Oh my god. So tell us about Hard Trick Room. I'm seeing somebody on there that I'm really happy to see on there.
Oh yeah, Stack. Yeah, I think that Stack Attack is going to open up a lot of room for like Hard Trick Room to function now, specifically because in the past we've had like these Trick Room setters and then offensive sweepers. But the fact that we have one that's combined into the same Pokemon is like absolutely huge for the archetype. It allows it to like have like these supports, like these fake out supports that might not do nearly as much damage. Whereas like you can go for like I think the Hitmontop Stack Attack is something that I've seen that's like very, very good. Where you can just like sit there with your Hitmontop or your Scrafty. Scrafty works too. And you have like this Intimidate support for Stack Attack, which even with this monster's defense stat, it still takes a lot from things like Superpowers and Earthquake, so it gets KO'd by a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
So having Intimidate super important. Like you can have like these fake out mons that aren't doing that much damage. You go for fake out Trick Room, and then on turn 2, you have all this offensive pressure because Stack Attack is such a threatening mon in the format. And I think it's big thing to realize why it's so threatening. And that's because of its Gyro Ball. Gyro Ball hits for max base power, 150 base power, on everything that's faster than, I believe it was 97. It's somewhere in that range. And if you're running the Lonely Stack Attacker, which I'll get to in a second, it's everything that is anything that's faster than 108 base speed.
Zach, not to interrupt, yeah, Zach, post it again. I just made you a mod. You can share.
Sure.
You can share links now. I just made you a mod. All right, sorry, Tommy, go ahead.
Yeah. So, Lonely Stack Attacker. You might be asking, what is Lonely Nature? Why are we running it?
Oh, one is the loneliest number.
It's not just sad.
Yeah.
Stack Attacker don't care. Stack Attacker lonely.
Stack Attacker is just a killer. It's just what he do. So, Lonely Nature boosts your attack stat and actually lowers your defense stat. And the reason why you'd run this Stacka is because that actually lowers. You run Lonely Nature, and you have to run a 17 or lower defense IV, and this allows Stack Attacker to actually get an attack beast boost when it picks up knockouts.
Nice.
And like with the attack beast boost, it actually can KO a large chunk of the format, if not like a lot of like the resistant mons drop to +1 Gyro Ball. Other big thing about it, a lot of like the other big thing, like okay, Life Orb Gyro Ball from Stack Attacker on like 2524 Feeny, like standard like regular bulk Feeny just drops. Gyro Ball just KOs a good portion of them. I don't think it's a guaranteed roll, but like that's just like a general like that shouldn't do that. That shouldn't KO that Pokemon. The other thing to realize is if you're running something like Hitmontop, you can also run Helping Hand, which means that you can so something like Landorus. Very, very important that if you were to get intimidated, you can reset your Intimidate by going for Helping Hand. So then, like, Landorus comes in, you Helping Hand Gyro Ball the Landorus, you were at -1, but you're neutral because of Helping Hand. That now KOs the Landorus. You get a +1 attack stat from the Beast Boost, and now you're back to neutral, and you've actually reset your Intimidate and killed their Intimidator.
Oh my god.
Which means on turn 2, you can go for a Helping Hand Gyro Ball into whatever's in the other slot, and it doesn't matter, because it's dead. And it's just really that strong.
I just want to point out that y'all were making fun of Mike and I for getting all hyped about Stack Attacker. Are you listening to Tommy? See, Mike and I knew what we were talking about. I mean, we really didn't, but we knew what we were talking about. Okay?
So
Oh
I'm sitting here screaming about Stack Attacka, and I think it's very important to realize, well, why wasn't that the number one thing that I should be afraid of, compared to Rain? That's because everything blows up Stack Attacka.
Oh,
It's
boo!
Landorus is still the number one Pokemon in the format, and it will pretty much always be the number one Pokemon in the format unless we get Intimidating Incineroar. And then like Tech Rage, Superpower from those KO it. All the Rain moves KO it, except for maybe Swampert. I think maybe Earthquake KOs it from Swampert, but yeah, like everything KOs Stacka, and the problem is getting up Trick Room. If Stacka gets up Trick Room, it's putting in a lot of work, and I think like one of the cooler things could be doing something like what Alex Underhill did last season with the Scarf Final Gambit Lucario, using that to set up Trick Rooms. Now we have Staraptor, which does the same thing, has a little bit higher base HP, which means it's able to pick up a few more knockouts. Also, it gets Intimidate, which means that you can KO one Mon and the other Mon will be left intimidated. So it's a lot easier for Stack Attacker to get up Trick Room. So you have access to that. You have access to better Fake Out Mons now. You have access to Follow Me, which was not a thing really last format at all. You have Rage Powder, which wasn't a thing last format at all, basically. So you have all these things now. And if you're able to get up Trick Room with Stack Attack, it's very, very powerful. The other thing is, if you get your Trick Room and you don't have a lot of health left, there's a lot of like hard Trick Room sweepers right now, like Araquanid, Camerupt, like the Flame Orb Hariyama from last year is still very, very strong. There's a lot of Trick Room mons. I don't think there's any like standard team right now, which is why the graphic just has like a kind of fill in the blank of whatever you want there.
Right.
But like you can go so many different ways with these hard Trick Room teams, and a lot of them will just be very, very strong. There's something that you basically have to have a game plan for, and if Trick Room goes up, a lot of the times you will lose the game.
Damn. So we're gonna be looking out for Gavin Michaels, am I right?
Potentially. I mean, I think he's over the whole muck thing, so maybe he'll go back to hard Trick Room.
Oh Lord, can I go? Oh, they both have it on there. I just hate Landorus so much. Can we just not talk about Landorus, please?
Wait,
like,
why?
Like,
you not like Landorus?
You know this. You know how much I hate Landorus. You know how much I hate Landorus.
Okay, I know.
Literally hate it.
I know I'm about to get disowned, but Landorus is actually probably one of like the healthiest mons for Pokemon.
No.
And it's like very, very important.
No.
It's super important.
No.
No. Are you talking about Rock Slide, or are you actually being serious?
I'm actually being serious.
Okay. Just making sure.
It's something I've talked about a lot in the past, that being able to condense multiple roles that a team needs to fill into one slot is super important, and it's very, very valuable, because if you have Landorus, a Pokemon like Landorus, you're covering an Intimidator that your team needs, you're covering a ground immunity that your team needs, you're covering a ground typing that your team very, very much wants. If you get all these things in one Pokemon, it's very, very hard to find other mons that can actually come even close to what it's doing.
Yeah, but okay, on the flip side, by putting them all into one mon, doesn't that kind of just start dictating that so many teams are going to have it, and it kind of makes your whole meta and your format just kind of start being dominated by that particular mon? I mean, I really am a big fan of diversity of team building and usage and tactics and strategies, but then again, I'm a crap player, so I don't know. It just seems like if that Pokemon is all that in a bag of chips, there's an old dad joke for you. Then you're just gonna see a whole lot of it and counters for it, and it's just kind of like, oh look, it's Landorus.
So very, very important thing is you're right. Like it is like a bit of a problem. The thing is that there is a very fine line that you pretty much tiptoe with these kind of things, with diversity and like over centralization. Like there is a very fine line that you cross to the other side, and like you don't want to cross for the most part, because when you have a very centralizing mon like Landorus, the thing about Landorus right now is that it's not like it's super strong. It's just a very, very solid mon with a lot of like good tools, but it's not like overpowering like something like Rain is. A good example of a mon that was overpowering when it was like super centralized was Kangaskhan, back in 2014 because there was nothing nearly as good as Kangaskhan in that format, and there was a reason why we saw it like dominate like majority of top cuts at regionals from like the second set of regionals in 14 to like the end of that format up until Worlds, where everyone literally said everyone's gonna run Mawile because we need to beat Kangaskhan, and it's so bad to the point where Kangaskhan didn't finish in the top. I think the highest placing at Worlds in 14 was 14th because of the fact that everyone was trying to hard counter Kangaskhan because it was clearly the best Pokemon in the format. The thing with Landorus is it's not like Landorus is super like hard and overpowering. It's not like you need to like throw a lot on teams to beat Landorus. But the things that it does for the format and like the consistency that you have when team building is very, very important. Because when you have too many teams that are very, very good, that's why you have a lot of people being frustrated at a format like 2017, because there wasn't like a lot of like super like duper like good teams or good mons, so that there was a lot of different teams being thrown around, and it's very, very hard to build in a format when there's too much to cover. Because then say you can reasonably fit like 5 or 6 teams that you want to counter out of like the big like group of maybe like 15, and it's like you can take good matchups against like 5 of them. You can take neutral matchups against like 10 of them, and then you just like hard lose to 5 of them. And that's something that a lot of people really don't like in a format. But like the flip side to that is having the over centralization, have like something like Landorus be number 1 in the format, have like one of the megas be like number 2 or 3 in the format, that kind of stuff. Like last year we saw Arcanine and Kogo dominate the format for the entire of the year, but they weren't like archetype defining mons, a lot like Landorus. Landorus is not like a mon that defines any specific archetypes that makes one team super good. It just makes a lot of teams very, very good. It's an enabler. Like in the end, it probably will create more diversity because there's not like one team that's like better among the rest, like much better than the rest of the teams in the format. Something like we're very, very worried about with Rain right now. Rain just might be the best team in the format, and you might just be forced to run Rain. And a lot of reason why Rain is so good is because you have Landorus and Heatrans and Volcaronas are like on a lot of these teams, and like you cannot bring those mons against Rain. There's a very, very like fine line that you can cross, and like when you get into like good Pokemon being the top Pokemon in usage, like you have their teams dominate the entire field.
All right, fair enough.
So here's a question that I have, because you've been talking a lot about Rain, and I know that historically, and I want to say historically as in like 2+ or more years ago, we'd get to a certain time in the season, and then all the teams would be Japanese sand. And I think it usually it usually would hit around like nationals our time.
Yep.
Like Japan would hit, like they would get their sand team going like maybe around May, and then we'd see it over here in time for nationals. We didn't really see anything like that last year. At least I didn't really see anything like that last year. Are we going to see that this year, or should we expect that this year? Because I do see the bottom right team is got a T-Tar on it, and it looks like it could either be sun or sand. What are we thinking there? Are we thinking that we're going to have a Japanese sand team come up sometime later in the season?
Well, it's already seeing a lot of play right now.
Okay.
The reason why I haven't listed it on here is what I'll call the Aaron Cybertron Zing effect, where Aaron used a team very, very early on in the format, and it becomes very, very popular because Aaron used it. And I'm not necessarily sure if it's like a very, very good team yet, largely because one of like the worst possible things that could happen to Japan Sand was Tapu Fini becoming a Pokemon, because now you have a Mon that beats both the T-Tar and Excadrill side and the Ments at the same time, because like that was always a thing in the past because we had water types with Ice Move. That was always a thing that we had. But Fini is arguably the second most important Pokemon in the format right now, just because of what it does for teams. It's very, very versatile in the fact that you can run either Calm Mind sets, you can run Spec sets, you can run support sets with Heal Pulse and Icy Wind. There's a lot of different things you can do with Tapu Fini, and that Mon being super high up is very, very bad for Sand right now. That being said, I don't think that Sand is bad, and I think it probably will see play at some point in the season in like a large quantity. I just don't know if it's like all that yet, but like I wouldn't be surprised if it does like at some point in the season become one of the best teams.
Mm-hmm.
And then what about Sun? Because we did see a lot of Sun teams in Lily Cole and things like that this season. And there are 2 Sun mode Pokemon on your list here to look out for, the Mega Camerupt and the Char Y. Are we thinking that that's going to be a good rain counter, maybe? Or is that just not even feasible at this point because of the dominance of rain?
So this 5-mon rain team that we're seeing is almost certainly running multiple forms of rain dance, specifically the move, which is a very big problem for Zard. It doesn't mean that Zard doesn't help against rain. I was actually talking to another very good player, Yuri, about this, and basically Zard isn't a rain answer. Zard is a tool that you can use against rain that makes the matchup something you can win with the rest of your mons, because playing the whole tug and war with sun and rain is something you can do against like the weaker rain teams, the ones that aren't as rain centric. But like it just gives you more options. Like we were talking before about having good matchups against teams, having neutral matchups against teams, and having bad matchups against teams. And Charizard makes rain a neutral matchup for most teams, which is something that it does very, very well. Honestly, I think that's a big reason why we're seeing T-Tar pop onto a lot of these Sun teams, because if you have 2 weathers and they're just having the one Politoed or Pelipper, like having 2 weathers makes all the difference in that matchup, because it's a lot easier for you to cycle out your weather setters. And if you're able to have mons on the field that consistently can beat the Swift Swimmers, you're usually in like a pretty good spot, because that's where the strength of rain lies, is the fact that you're switching out your weather setters, not your damage output. Like you can keep your Swampert, your Ludicolo, and your Kingdra on the field, and on the turn that you switch back into your weather, you can go for water moves and KO something. Whereas with Charizard, if you want to switch into your Charizard, you have to take the turn to switch in, or wait till something gets knocked out to switch it in. And like you lose that turn of offensive damage output, and you're relying on your partners. Whereas Rain just like is able to use the Swift Swimmers like still to a very, very like high damage output potential. And it's not like they have to really like worry too much. They just like switch in and blow things up. It's just like very, very, very powerful.
Cool.
Hey, so let's see. I think we all kind of want to avoid that last section in the bottom part of the chart. I mean, I don't think that's necessary.
It's very important to talk about.
It is, but
well, because there's like 8 Pokemon
really
down there that I just don't want to talk about, because I'm just gonna pretend they don't exist.
I can give you some good news about it. Would you like some good news?
Yes.
So that chalk team of the past of 2015 looks to be dead. It looks to be a very defunct team. A lot of people are trying to run it on day one with like 1 or 2 changes. I know, Gabby, you played that team, the Naganadel version.
Yeah.
And it's just not nearly as strong. And it looks like the new version that we're starting to see is the core of Tapu Fini, Zapdos, and Landorus specifically is very, very strong, just because Fini beats a lot of the other very good mons in the format, like your Landoruses, your Heatrans. Calm Mind can set up in front of Aegislash and doesn't even care about Never-Ending Nightmare Aegislash, because it doesn't do any damage, and you just heal back up with your berries eventually. Landorus, of course, is your key intimidator in the format, and then Zapdos has the big gain of it got Misty Seed as a tool that it can run, or it can run the Electrium Z, and both of those are seeing a lot of use. The 50% berries are seeing a lot of use, so it's just like 3 mons that you can run all 3 of those mons so many different ways, and they're like very, very strong no matter how you run them for the most part. And there is no
we lost
like
Zach again.
Yeah.
Beard Cam.
There's like no set mega right now, because I think a lot of people are realizing that while Kang is like still like super strong, it's not nearly as strong as it used to be. And Mike, we were talking about this before, the new speed mechanics, and how the megas get their speed on turn 1. And I don't think that benefited from anybody like more than Metagross benefited from it, because it jumps up from 70 base speed to 110 base speed.
I think that's the one specifically that caught me off guard. I was like, oh, hey, look, it's and I'm like, whoa, what just happened?
Super key point of Metagross in 2015, it basically had to protect on turn 1, else you're playing a very, very risky game. And now the fact that not only was Metagross got the speed boost on turn 1, but Sucker Punch was also nerfed from 80 base power down to 70, which means that it's a lot safer sitting in front of stuff like Kangaskhan, which a lot of times don't even run Sucker Punch anymore. We're seeing a lot of Ice Punch King come into play because Power Punch was a move that Kangaskhan can no longer learn in Gen 7. It was a TM in Gen 6 and was not reintroduced at all in Gen 7. So you can't run Power Punch in VGC anymore. With that, like, your way of beating opposing landers and intimidators was to Power Punch when they came in so you could reset your attacks, your attack boosts and stuff like that. Now that you can't do that anymore, you have to either switch out or find other ways around that. And the best way to do that right now we're seeing is probably Ice Punch from Kang. Has the potential to KO Landorus just at -1. It also has the potential to KO Salamence with a little bit of chip damage. So Fake Out plus Ice Punch generally will KO a good chunk of Salamence out there. So having Ice Punch is like...
There he is. Zach's
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, having Ice Punch is just like a very, very cool tool for Kangaskhan to have now. And that's another reason why Kangaskhan isn't nearly as strong or overpowering in this format. Like, Power Punch was the large reason why it was like so strong and so oppressive. But right now, it's just like to the point where Power Punch is not available, so like it doesn't really matter anymore.
Mike, we have the image of the Kangaskhan's usage stats on the global link. So if you want to put up that slide there, there's the Kangaskhan.
Yep. Yep.
Fun. Yay.
One thing I was kind of expecting, honestly, not so much the Metagross on this core, but Mega Lopunny. So I know that back in 15, Mega Lopunny was kind of used as the alternative Kangaskhan. And I don't believe it was nerfed going into 18 at all. Really. I haven't done calcs with it yet, but...
Like, a large problem like Lopunny right now is if you're running Lopunny, you're not really... getting like the full value out of the Mega Slot, because the Mega Slot right now I think is turning more towards being a bulk-centric mon. We're not seeing a lot of like these frailer Megas being used. We're seeing Kangaskhan, Metagross. The exception right now I guess would be Charizard, but that's largely because Sun is so important of a tool right now that we're seeing a lot more Zard. Pretty much all the other Megas are running a little bit more bulk. Like even Kangaskhan was almost standard at max speed all the time in 15, and like it's still like it wouldn't always run max speed, but generally like some bulk here and there was almost a little bit uncommon. Now like a lot of the Kangaskhan are just running a lot of bulk. A lot of the other mons in the format are running a lot of bulk, and specifically in the Mega Slot, and I think that's a very like key change to the role of the Mega now on the teams. And like Lopunny doesn't like do too much. That's something like a Pheromosa wouldn't do right now. Like if you were to ask like what like Lopunny would do right now, it's like it got completely outclassed by Pheromosa, I guess would be like the best way to like see it as like a nerf to Lopunny, because at this point like you have all like the same tools as far as like coverage goes. You probably even have a little bit more with Pheromosa, which is a mon that I peg to be a very, very important mon going into this format, and hasn't seen a lot of play so far. I'm not sure exactly how good it's gonna be, but I still have high hopes for Pheromosa just because of the mons in the format.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, so that's Kang. Do we want to switch over to the usage stats from the team list, or
I'd
did
like
you have
to
anything else to talk about on the teams to look out for, Tommy?
I think that's largely it. Just one quick note on Metagross before we leave. I know Zach wanted to talk about this as well. The movesets that Metagross are running. Because one of the
Mike,
big
put
things
up
that
the Metagross slide.
One big thing that a lot of the Pokemon in this format picked up was Stomping Tantrum, which is a 75 base power ground move that's single target. It's a move tutor that a lot of different mons got on this format, and specifically on Metagross, it allows it to have a move slot that can hit multiple targets that it needed to hit in Heatran and Aegislash and Stack Attacka. So we're seeing a lot more Stomping Tantrum, and while Tapu Lele is definitely the #1 partner for Metagross right now, I do think a lot of people will start trending towards running it with stuff like Feeny instead. And a lot of people are also thinking about dropping Zen Headbutt for running 2 coverage moves in the form of Iron Head and Ice Punch, just because of the coverage that provides. I don't think it'll become standard like as a your end all be all set, but I do think like those 4 moves plus like the Protect Ironheads that have like +1 of the coverage moves are still gonna like see like a decent amount of play here and there.
Cool.
Awesome. Because we are running past the hour, but
yeah, it's already.
I do want to touch
Oh.
at least briefly the usage stats. So.
All right, so I'm going to put
wanna
up
hit
the
1 through
top
13?
usage stats, 1 through 13. There we go.
There he
Bam.
goes. So pretty.
Zach
All
makes the
right.
best graphics, by the
Lando.
way. So
Lando.
if you don't follow Professor Shroomish, Prof Shroomish on Twitter, you probably should be, because
That's right.
he gets your
Do
usage
it.
stats up there, and they're awesome.
Do it.
Do it.
All right.
So one Pokemon that's on
My
here that we
internet
haven't
is
talked
the
about at
best,
all.
So Twitch isn't updating.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Zach.
I'm sorry, I cut out for a sec. Okay, it's up there. It's up there. All right. I wasn't saying anything important. Sorry. What were you saying?
No, I was saying there's one Pokemon on here that we haven't talked about yet, and that's the number 3 Pokemon in Cresselia. But I think if Cresselia is in format, Cresselia is going to be in your top 10, if not your top 5. So I don't think anybody's surprised about that at all.
No.
I mean, I'm happy that that it's going to be KO'd by Stakataka, but she's going to be up there no matter what. But I mean, are there anything that's surprising in this top 13 graphic to anyone? Looking
No,
at
not me.
Tommy or Zach?
Kangaskhan is not the number 1 Mega in the format, and Charizard is number 1, which is kind of surprising to me. But in the end, like, I'm not terribly surprised. I think that seeing that Metagross, Salamence, Kang, and Zard are all like within like 10 points of each other shouldn't come as like too much of a shock. I don't think that any one of them are over that much better than the others that they deserve to be so much higher in usage, but which is actually like very, very good for something like what Mike wanted, where we're going to see a lot of diversity in terms of which megas are going to be good this year, because I think this group of megas is like super strong, and I even think that the next group like below it, there are like a decent amount of the B tier megas that will see like a decent amount of play and like have some success this year.
Right.
Here, so I'll activate the other graphic that shows the 14.
Could we stick on the first one
Yep,
for just
we can.
a second? Sorry.
Yep. Sorry.
Just a few things. One minor thing and one major thing with this. The Charizard, as you'll notice, it's only a little bit higher than Kangaskhan, but then you need to consider that only 91% of Charizards are holding that Charizard Y, because Charizard has 2 Mega Evolutions. 9% of them are X. So if you were to separate them into 2 separate Pokemon, Kangaskhan would be a little bit higher up on the Mega scale.
Okay.
And the other thing I wanted to mention, these 13 Pokemon, the 13 Pokemon you're looking at right now, Landorus, Tapu Fini, Cresselia, Charizard, Kangaskhan, Tapu Koko, Tyranitar. I don't want to name the rest. This is getting
the people can see.
You can see them. These have been the top 13 Pokemon for the entirety of Battle Spot since Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon were released. They've been top 13 every week. Okay, week 1 was a little weird, and we had Naganadel and Mawile in top 13. But weird 1 was really weird because not many people had the game, and I don't think about week 1 very much.
Week 1 doesn't count. We're losing Zach again. There he is.
From week two. Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, I'm back. Week 4 and
he's back.
And week 5. All 13 of these Pokemon have been in top 13. They've moved around a little bit, but they've all been the same. So there's one who I think can break this 13, but other than that, I think this is what we're going to be looking at for quite a while. And yeah, I think.
So what do you think can break the top 13?
I think. Well, we'll see him on the next slide.
Here comes the next slide. There it is. And
it is Tapu Bulu.
Oh, Bulu.
He just bubbled out, really.
If you sleep on Tapu Bulu in this format, you are in for a very rude awakening. Bulu is a very good Pokemon in this format.
Like, Blue was like, I think he started as 23 and then he went up to 18, 17. But lately he's been hovering around 14 and 15. So I think if any Pokemon can break that top 13 and incorporate himself into that group, it's Tapu Bulu. And as you'll see, right after Tapu Bulu, we have our special friend Komo-o, who I am so happy to see there. And let's see how he keeps going. I don't know if it'll change. What else do we see there?
So Tommy's #1 team is the Rain team, but we're not seeing those guys until 17. I mean, you know, if you figure Gothmaw may run a Rain thing, you got you got Mawile on there, but like, why are the Rainmons not higher up on this usage list?
Oh, that's very easy to see. It's actually exactly what Zach was saying before about Charizard X and Charizard Y. If you combine the usage stats for Pelipper and Politoed, you're looking at like 16% usage for Rain.
Oh yeah, you're right, because 8.5 and 8.3, right? Yeah, 8.3 would put that smack in the well, let me pull up my other thing here. Yeah, that would put it at number 11 above Salmence. So
right, and then you're also seeing Ludicolo on there at 23, and that's when Ludicolo is also competing with Swampert and Kingdra for the Swift Swim slot. Like, just to see Ludicolo that high up when it's competing for 2 other Pokemon for the same role, as well as having the other Rainmons up there, is like very, very huge, very significant.
Oh,
I am reading chat. I'm just trying to get the people to talk about what you guys are talking about. It's not that I don't know what you're talking about. I'm seeing the conversation, and I'm trying to bring the conversation up here. Okay? Thank you. It's called moderation, people.
Oh, wait. That's actually a really good point. Somebody in chat brought it up. Where's Volcarona?
Oh, Rain. Did I cut out? Oh, Volcarona. Okay, I'll remember the thing I said I was going to say about Rain for in a minute. Volcarona was bring around like 28, 30 or so, and then just this week it dropped to 31.
That's very interesting. Because...
I would expect Volcarona to be above Amoonguss, wouldn't you? I mean, especially considering what you were telling us earlier about how Rage Powder is kind of nullified now. I mean,
am I still there?
Yeah, you are, for grass types at least.
Well, I mean, the thing with Volcarona is the reason why a lot of people are very, very high on it is it got like 2 super good items that it can use now, which was always like a weird point for Volcarona. You'd run like weird things like Citrus Berry or Focus Sash or Charcoal even, and like it had like this weird moose or a weird item problem where it didn't really know what it wanted to run. But now it has
again.
Yeah. Now we have 2 like very, very important options in Zimu, specifically Furium Z is very, very strong for it, as well as having the 50% berries, the Wiki Berry, the Agua Berry, etc., which are also like seeing a lot of play on them. I personally love the Furium Z set because I think that, you know, being able to quiver and then go for Furium Z is like super good for Volk and allows it to remove a lot of the threats that could otherwise take it out. I think one of the best ways to, as an offensive player, like one of the best ways to like remove your threats is to kill them. So you just like have your Volk Furium Z, something that would otherwise take it out like a Landorus, and it hits an entire like another level of damage output that allows it to stick on the field a lot longer because it KOs its big threats.
Still talking about Volk?
Yeah, we're still talking about Volk.
Gotcha. Oh. Sorry, I cut out. I lost again.
This part's going to be like pretty biased, but I also think that like the Rage Powder Tailwind set on Volk, the really like support set oriented Volk, I think that set is actually like very, very good now, specifically because Kangaskhan and Mence and like things in like that range have gone down in their power scale because of the nerfs to Parental Bond and Aerialates and the like. And because of that, I think that it's a lot easier for Volk to sit there and stay on the field, which is like something that's very, very good for Volk. And I think that set might see a little bit more play depending on how the year like plays out. I think the Furium Z Quiver Dance stuff, like Quiver Dance in general, is like by far the better set. But like in a bubble, I think that, you know, like it's the Rage Powder Tailwind set is also like a very, very cool set that might see a little bit of play, specifically because it like Amoonguss doesn't have like the super role of just sporing everything anymore because terrains exist. Feeny and Coco can now put up terrains. There's a lot of floating mons in the format, so Spore is still very, very good. Aliel Hibiki every time he drops Spore on a Mungus because it's still a very, very good move. But it's not God anymore. It can't just Spore whatever it wants to. So I think Volca's still super good. I think Aegislash with Never Ending Nightmare is also a lot better right now. I think that Never Ending Nightmare is absolutely huge for it. So if that continues to get better, then I think that Volk will continue to get better as well.
Where was Aegislash? Aegislash was top
7,
13,
top
right?
10.
Top 10.
Number 9. Yeah, there
9.
it is. Number 9.
Gotcha.
Okay. Is there anything else that we want to talk about with the stats? Because I know that people had questions about timer and things like that, so I wanted to briefly talk about that.
Just a few really quick facts about the stats in the first few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
There's only been one Pokemon that's increased in usage every week, and that's Komalo.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only been one Pokemon who's decreased in usage every week in this top 40 or so, the ones who have passed in and out of 30, and that is Incineroar. It started out at number 15 at the start, and it's just dropped or maybe it was 14, but Incineroar has just dropped every week. It could just be because people were playing with their in-game teams and they had an Incineroar because it was their starter. It could be because people use it to beat Aegislash and Metagross. I'm not sure. Either way, Incineroar is turning out to be not quite as good as we thought it was, but I still think it's good.
I wouldn't exactly say that. Like, I think that Incineroar is like quickly becoming a very like important mon for the format. I'm actually surprised that it's going down in usage, but like for like reasons you've been saying before, like it handles Metagross, it handles Aegislash, which are like 2 super important mons in the format. It's a bulky fake out, which is something that the format will always want, and if it ever gets Intimidate, it will be a top 5 usage mon. It will probably be a top 3 usage mon, but easily top 5, like without a doubt.
I mean, is there any indication whatsoever that we'll ever get Intimidate on it? Like, I feel like we've been waiting forever for Intimidate on that thing.
I don't think they want to release it because it would be too good, honestly. Like, I was surprised that it was still Intimidate when Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon came out. I was convinced because we saw them change the hidden abilities on the birds a couple years back.
Yeah.
Like, I was convinced they were going to pull something like that again because it was just too good to release.
It's multiple times they've done it.
Like
Shadow Tag Chandelure,
Shadow Tag Chandelure,
Lightning Rod Zapdos, and then I think it was the dogs also had Volt Absorb, Water Absorb, and Flash Fire.
Yep, got changed.
All three of those sets got changed, and those were all like significant things that if they got them, they'd be like super duper strong. But yeah, it remains to be seen whether or not we'll get. The thing that's really interesting is if they decide to change Incineroar's like ability from Intimidate to something else, would they also change the other 2? Because those are specific abilities for the starters that they otherwise like no other Pokemon gets those abilities. The long reach for Decidueye, and then Liquid Voice for Primarina. Like those are exclusive abilities. So I wonder if they were gonna change Intimidate, would they change the other 2 as well? Because like those are abilities that just like would not be on any Pokemon in the game. Would be very, very weird.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So I think that wraps up.
They might even make a new signal. Oh.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was cutting out when you started. They might even make a new ability for Incineroar, like Long Reach and Liquid Voice, just so he has a unique one like the other 2. Anyway, sorry.
No. You can.
That's a good point.
So. Like I said, people had kind of submitted questions, and I think the main one that was pertinent to what we were talking about, because there was a lot of different things that came up in the comments that we got on Twitter, but I think the main one was the 5-minute timer, and I know that there's a lot of varying opinions on this, and some people have said, well, I haven't gone to timer yet, and some people are like, well, I'm going to timer every turn or every game or whatever. What are, 3 panelists now, you guys have been playing. What is your opinion of the 5-minute timer? I guess we'll start with Gabby, since it's kind of going to affect you specifically when to come to commentary, because you guys are going to be kind of speeding up between turns a little bit, I think.
Yeah, so I'm a little concerned for 2 reasons. As a player, I think I'll adjust to it fine. But, as a commentator, it brings up this really interesting point. We'll have less time in between turns, and we'll also have more time at the end of the round. So it's going to lead to a different sort of kind of commentary. I'd personally like to focus more on post-game stuff, like maybe doing post-game analysis, going a little bit more into detail about turns, and using the time after the match to kind of cover what happened, and also not hold on a commercial break for 45 minutes or whatever.
I mean, but so far the streams, I guess the last 2 streams have been doing pretty successfully, I should say, at the filling of the time, as it were.
We got lucky, especially in Memphis, when we pulled matches, that we pulled good matches that were as long as they needed to be, and that's not always the case. That's probably like one of the hardest things is looking at a list of players and not only thinking who would be entertaining to watch, but who would be entertaining to watch that'll last about an hour.
Right.
So I'm not really sure. Like, I know that for grassroots streams, I'd like to try and figure out a way to maybe do like highlights, having someone like clipping the match as we go along so that we can bring up the videos afterwards. But that's going to be some new technology. It probably won't work the first time we try it. Probably won't work the second time we try it. So it'll be an adjustment.
Yeah, definitely. Zach, have you played with the new timer much at all? I know you said you've been playing Golf Mall.
Yeah. I have one very big opinion about the timer, but only one opinion. It's
it would break up right as he's about to give us his opinion. Yeah, Zach, you're gonna have to repeat that whole thing.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. Am I back?
All we know is that it stresses you out, and it stresses you out a lot.
The new timer stresses me out a lot because it's always red.
Oh, yeah.
Is it really?
You don't have much time left. Now it's just always red, and
I don't like that.
Oh my God, there's 4 minutes and 32 seconds left. How much time did I spend? But I'm not a fan of the new timer.
Yeah, that is really stressful. Oh.
Only for my mental well-being, I guess. Like, I haven't gone to timer yet, but I
mostly
always
because
feel like
you're seeing the red and you're stressing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Tommy, you're giving us the eyes down there, and yeah.
It is so bad.
Oh,
like,
God.
okay, I've played maybe 200 games in this format on a timer already. Just from the streaming pretty much every day. So, we got like maybe if I'm not at 200, I'm close to 200. I want to say I've gotten the time probably between 5 to 10 times, okay?
Okay,
so
it's not
it's not a lot. It's not a lot at all, and it shouldn't be a lot. The problem is the games that you do go down to timer. It's games that you're sitting there, and the games might not even go on for like that many turns. It's just games that you're sitting there trying to think about your turns and maybe what would be like a very, very hard thought out matchup. We talked before about something like Shadow Tech stuff, where if you ever slip up like any like small portion of the game, like you just lose instantly because like it's such a tug of war of momentum and board positioning that if you ever get anything wrong, you just lose the game instantly. So you want to think about those turns as much as possible. So you're sitting there and you're waiting for the turns to play out, and then all of a sudden you're down to like 30 seconds, and it's like generally you're not going to lose the game on timer. When I say I've gone to like games on timer, I'm not talking about actually like the timer hits 0 and one of the people wins. Okay. It's when the games go under about a minute and both players are now rushing because like we don't have any time to make our move. So generally you're not like thinking through your plays. You're just like thinking while the animations are happening and clicking the buttons as soon as they pop up because you don't want to lose on the timer, because at least if you click buttons, you have a chance to win. If you just let the timer go into 0, you just lose the game. So at that point, it's just like it's really disheartening to play like a long, thought out game and like maybe we're winning the game on like board positions and stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like you're just out of time. But like maybe you only played like 8 or 9 turns in that game. It's not like it was a long like 15, 16, 20 turn game. It was like a relatively short game and you took all your time, which has never been a problem in the past. Honestly, even like 2 minutes I think would be even better. Like 2 minutes on top of what we have. I meant if we had 7 minutes to play out our games, most of these games that like go like super duper long, like the long like thought out games, these games would end like in time for the games to actually like conclude. Whereas you still have your games like obviously minimize has been a problem that people have thought about, and it seems like it is a problem. I do think minimize is a very very strong team, and I would not be surprised to see it do well at tournaments this year because I think it is strong enough, and the timer enables it to perform well enough in that environment to the point that it can win. There was a strategy last year where you could just, maybe try and play the game out and like hope that you wasted 45 minutes and all of a sudden at the last you just forfeit and then you go into game 2 and you win a quick game 2. That was like the way to beat minimize last year, and it deterred enough people from playing it, so it never got any like notable results.
Mm-hmm.
But now, like, there's no way to like stall out that game 1 even long enough to win because you're gonna lose on time if you're not mashing your buttons every second, and likely you're gonna lose on time because they go down to 1 Pokemon where you have 2 Pokemon left, so you have to put in 2 inputs where they only have to put in 1. So even if you click your buttons as fast as possible, you're still having generally more inputs than they are, which means you're taking more time than they are. So I'm very, very concerned about it, and I do hope that something gets changed. I know that I said they're still looking at it, but like right now, it looks to be a problem, and I think it will take like the first 2-3 sets of regionals like to actually see how big of a problem it is. I don't think we're gonna have many games like go down to like 0-0 on the timer, but I do think it'll be like a significant amount of games in very significant spots that it will cause a commotion, and you will hear a lot about it.
Okay. Well,
I think one of the things that players don't account for, and this really isn't going to come into play with the shorter timer, it's mostly the longer timers, that players, when you guys are practicing, like you're practicing on, Battle Spot or Showdown or whatever, and you're really only doing like single games, and even if you do like a best of 3 with a friend or something like that, you're not considering the overarching like round timer and the things that go into that. And so, players don't really get that kind of understanding or grasp on that until they get it a couple of tournaments under their belt with it. And so like Tommy says, you don't know how it's going to shake out until you have a couple of regionals, go by and see how the community as a whole handles it. And it's not just, the super competitive players either. It's also the casual players who, again, don't really think about going to the tournament and dealing with this other set of timers. And then, then you go into the discussion of, the tournament fatigue where you're playing 9 rounds or 8 rounds of 45 minutes. And now with this 5-minute game, not only going to hit tournament fatigue, but you're going to hit that, that mental game where you're stressing yourself out looking at that 5 minutes. Like Zach said, that thing is red at you. And now you're going 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds of that stress. It's going to hit a lot of players hard this year. And if I can stress anything at all, it would be to mentally prepare yourself, make sure that you're taking good physical care of yourself during tournaments, the water and the whole thing. Because this timer is going to hit you guys hard, man. Like, you're not going to see it coming, and then all of a sudden you're going to get, like, round 6 or round 7, and the stress is just going to make you all crumble. So, and Tommy and I talk about this all the time, the mental and the physical fatigue of these tournaments, and it's something that people really don't consider. So definitely coming this season, you guys want to think about these things. Was there anything else VGC18 wise that we needed to discuss? I mean, we did a rules format stream already.
I don't know. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about after the first weekend of the format.
Yeah.
I know, Jen, you have your mid-season.
Yep, I got my mid-season next Saturday. Not this Saturday, next Saturday, January 6th. And I know that SoCal... Yes, we have a stream. Where are you January 6th, Gabby? Are you back on the West Coast?
I'm running with a friend of mine that's a mouse that's not running. Pikachu.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
Because I was going to say, if you were still on the East Coast, you should come to Brooklyn.
I would. But
no, running is cool.
No, running is cool.
Running is definitely cool. No, we're definitely streaming next weekend. We'll be here live sometime around 11 a.m. January 6th. Tommy's going to be one of our commentators, which is fantastic. And then I know that SoCal has their mid-season January 1st, so we'll get some good data from those things. But again, I think Mike is right. I think it's really going to be looking at looking at Dallas the first,
Yeah.
or I should say the last weekend.
Florida has an MSS as well that weekend that's going to be streamed, thanks to the Florida crew.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Well,
I think that wraps up. Well, that wraps up VGC18. Gabby and I are actually working on a really cool project that we want to share with you guys. We don't have the framework set up yet because we're kind of trying to shake it out, but there's been a lot of talk historically, like in the past, of compiling player like stats and bios and things like that, and so Gabby has been kind enough to create a submission form, and I'm gonna paste it into the chat right now. It is a submission form where we want players worldwide to, and this is all divisions, junior, seniors, masters, to give us their achievements. And basically what we're going to try and do is, I don't know if we're going to do like a wiki or what framework we're going to get, but it's going to be on the Liberty Garden website. I have the website, it's there, it's not being used for the most part, so I'm volunteering the website. We're going to try and recruit some people to help us do the work. But basically we want to start collecting information, and Gabby and I actually started talking about it after Memphis. We thought it would be a really great thing for the casters to have, so that they can kind of look at the list of players coming to the event as the live roster is getting updated, during check-in, and say, okay, so who do we have, who's here, let's get their stats, let's talk about their things on stream. But we also feel that it's been tried often enough and not really kind of picked up. The community as a whole wants that historical record of how everybody has done in the past, and I have a couple of ideas of what all I want on there. I just haven't thought about how to implement it. So right now, if you can start sharing that link so that we can start getting submissions, it's going to be put to good use, I promise you. So
yeah, I mean, just my 2 cents, it did come up in Memphis actually a couple times. All we had going into the tournament was CP standings of everybody who was there. And while it's great, since we could talk, oh, this person doesn't have any CP, and I happen to recognize their name from 5 years ago, so that's a talking point that we have. But it's such tribal knowledge that it will be really helpful for us commentators and really the other members of the community, I think, to just get sort of a record that's outside of these championship points. I mean, you also have really great grassroots tournaments as well. Like, I know, Zach, you organized one a couple weeks ago, and I can't remember the name of it. I'm so sorry. There's the pre-international challenge tournaments that Zelda helps run. There's so many other things that would be just interesting information to know going into tournaments. So anything you can share would be greatly appreciated.
Awesome.
Sam just actually mentioned that fact-checking these is going to be a nightmare. Yeah, that is definitely true. I think I think part of it, because the if you look at the form that Gabby made, it asks for your Twitter handle and your email address, and so at any point, if we're questioning somebody's finish, there's a bunch of different things that we can do. I know Trainer Tower has been compiling like teams and the names of people who finish, and obviously for regionals, things like that, there's the Pokemon website, but then there's also players' individual accounts. And so if somebody says, hey, I got first at South Africa Regionals 2015 and I want to fact check that before I put it on the site, well, I'm going to ask them to send me a screenshot of their account from Pokemon.com, because that stuff goes back for forever. If you still have the same ID, if you still have access to that. So there's definitely...
Yeah, and it's worth noting that this system won't directly post to whatever the display is going to be for these packs. So it will be moderated. Like, that's always been, I think, in our minds from day one. Mm-hmm. So please use it responsibly. You can write silly stuff in there if you want to make us laugh, but overall, I would really appreciate it if we could try and take this one seriously, guys.
Yeah, like we said, there's been so many people that have tried to get this off the ground. that, we're going to put in the attempt, and hey, you know what? We may not be able to get it to go anywhere either, but we're going to put in the effort because we think that this is important enough for the community as a whole to get that out there. I just thought of something about, like, if you submit something and then next weekend you go and win your mid-season, if you want to update that, Gabby, how should they handle that? Should they just go back and
just go back in and do a resubmission? Again, this is all going to have to be moderated somehow anyway. So just for now, keep submitting the form, and eventually there will be a button that'll be like updating your information or something. Click here. But for now, that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think in the meantime, if you submit one and then you go and win a mid-season, or you think of something, you could always just DM us on Twitter, Liberty Garden VG, and we'll get that updated. Like I said, there's no framework for this stuff to be put out online yet. It's something that Gabby and I are going to talk about to figure out how we want to do it. But right now we have the forms to take the submissions. So we would really like that if you guys can start sharing that for us. Is there anything else that we needed to chat about, or are we? I
think we're at the end tonight.
Tommy's staring into space. You're staring into space.
What am I doing?
Poor Tommy. Your sleep cycle's off. I can tell.
No, I'm actually like on a normal sleep schedule. I just get really tired after streaming for I've been on camera for like 4 or 5, 6 hours today.
I blame Hibiki. It's his fault.
It's always Hibiki's fault. It's okay. Except when it's my fault.
All right.
It's always Hibiki's fault. But thank you so much for watching, everyone. We'll be back here next Tuesday. Mike, do we have a topic yet?
I don't know. We'll probably start hitting some more of this. We'll probably revisit some of this, is for sure. The timer, usage stats, for sure. Yeah. But maybe some other loose topics as we head into the first set of
a couple events. Of the other judges and I and Mike were talking about starting a like an entry-level VG kind of situation thing, and that's something that we've been working on to get you guys QR code teams and to talk about, like, breeding and catching and all that kind of stuff. So maybe we can start that next week, like a kind of entry-level stream about that kind of stuff. I'll talk to Dan and Patrick and things like that. If you guys have any ideas, obviously, you can let us know. But thank you so much for watching this week. We really appreciate it. We hope you had a great holiday. And obviously it's New Year's this coming weekend, I should say. So Happy New Year from all of us here. And Mike, you want to take it out? Does anybody have anything to say wrapping it up?
Sounds great. We'll catch you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for watching.
All right.
See you.